No code is the worst term for no code that there possibly is. I think it's misleading. It devalues the product. Shopify is the biggest no code company in the world, in my opinion. It's really, really hard to scale an ad-free service. When I saw what OpenAI was doing around text to code, it was like the light bulb moment. And I said, holy shit, OpenAI just became the biggest no code company in the world.
Hey everyone, my name is Doc Williams, and today we are here in the new Kit Studios, and we have a special guest in mind. So first of all, who are we with today? Who are we talking to?
My name is Matt Grandel.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Of course. It's great to be in Boise, and it's my first craft and commerce. So, I have met a ton of really interesting people, and it's just been a tremendous experience so far.
Yeah, we met 2 days ago. Feels like I've known you for years now. It's been great.
It's funny because I feel like we had a ton of mutual Twitter followers. You're in the no-code world. I saw you on David's podcast, so I feel like kind of we run in the same circles online.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Really
it's
funny.
good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Great to meet you in person.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your background, like what brought you here, all that kind of stuff.
So, definitely a non-traditional background in the tech space. I graduated college from Indiana and went into finance. Worked on Wall Street for about 6 years, covering media technology stocks. And at a certain point, I really like the media and technology industry tremendously. It's what led me to do that. But ultimately, kind of realized that I wasn't adding a ton of value in terms of creating product. We weren't building anything. We were analyzing companies. We were helping companies go public. And it just wasn't super fulfilling in that sense. And so I sort of made a drastic change in 2017. I left the industry, and I was living in New York at the time, and packed up and moved to Los Angeles. Without sort of a plan, without just figuring that I would make things work. And did a bunch of consulting for about a year and a half until I had this idea called Shuffle TV that I wanted to pursue. It was basically a way to solve some of the curation issues on YouTube. I had a view that it was a very lean forward type platform where you had to click on videos and you had to curate the experience yourself. It wasn't a very lean back experience like a Pluto TV or a Zumo, and so wanted to build that. Didn't want to pay $500,000 or more to get an MVP built out, and so I basically said, how hard could it be? And that led me down. I feel like that's every no coder's sort of initial path. How hard could it be? This was sort of right around the beginning of end of 2019. So basically the start of COVID. And I remember, spending countless nights, did not sleep a lot during this period, but spent a lot of nights hacking this MVP together for Shuffle. And this was before I found Bubble. But it was basically using Webflow, using the Webflow CMS as what I thought was a database, and hacking together the features. And we got an MVP up, within like 3 or 4 weeks. And ultimately, the concept didn't work out for a number of more business reasons. Just it's super hard to, it's really, really hard to build an ad-free service, because you need to basically run the thing and pay for it, and pay for the time that it takes to grow the company until you hit a critical mass of scale, and it's just a hard business model. So go figure, right? It's hard to build a free ad-supported platform, and this was around the time when Zumo and Pluto TV were getting big, but I kind of realized that after 5 or 6 months, like that sort of wasn't going to work. But I was super interested in tech and building. I'd taught myself a lot by this time, and then I found Bubble, and it was the big unlock, I think, that I had been looking for with Webflow, and it just was Webflow wasn't the platform, and Bubble was the platform. Like the big unlock was, you know, like if you think about the front end, Webflow was a better front end at that time, and still is.
Yeah.
Database, it's sort of a commodity, right? Like there's nothing. The major unlock was the workflow tab for Bubble, and that was missing all the logic, the way that they abstracted technical logic, with Bubble, was missing on the internet, and I think that's sort of what did it for me. So fast forward.
Wait, before we go there, I got a couple questions in between this. Okay.
Let me just round out the story. So
Okay,
founded a consulting and development agency called Restack Labs in 2020, and have since then. So for the past 4 years, been building all sorts of apps and different pieces of software for a variety of different types of companies.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Now I got to unpack all these things. This is
There you
good
go.
stuff. This is good stuff.
It's been fun.
So tell me about, okay, so you go out to LA. First of all, why did you switch over to LA? What was the reason behind that? Have you ever been in LA? Did you have family in LA? What was the reason? Better weather? What happened?
I mean, for sure, better weather. I'd been out a couple times for work, and a couple times just visiting friends and with friends. And I had been in New York for, 7 years, working pretty hard, and just, I'm sure you've been to New York before, in the city, and I think it can start to grind on you. And so I kind of was like looking for a change, and I kind of had a view that I'd be in LA for like a year or two, and 7 years later, I'm in LA with a wife, and we just had our first kid about
Congrats.
a year ago, and so it's been a fun ride.
It's crazy. Okay. So this is good. So then I'm thinking about the first SaaS idea. Okay, so did you have co-founders? What happened with this? How did you go to a convention and find people? What happened with that and trying to build the team for that?
Yeah, so I mean, no co-founders, fully, solopreneur, and I think that experience has, and other experiences, has kind of like shaped how important having maybe it's not even partners or co-founders, but just a network of people to lean on when you're doing this. I didn't really have a network of people that I knew that were building with no code, that were building tools, that were even building in that space. So, it was definitely it made things more challenging, I think, by not having a co-founder or at least a network of people that you could kind of lean into.
Makes sense. How did you find no code? Like the term, were you just searching on Google? Like, how did you find it? Did a friend suggest it? Love to hear it.
Look, I had always been kind of technically minded. I mean, I was always into tech, not coding, but just the tech space. I covered tech companies. So the term no code, I think the first time I saw it came up probably around the time when I was building Shuffle. I would have to say probably with Webflow, and then obviously in retrospect, I think it's easy to kind of view all the no code companies that kind of came before the Webflow and Bubble era, that weren't and still aren't appreciated as no code. Shopify is the biggest no code company in the world, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It typifies no code, right? It serves a different audience. It's not serving developers or no code creators, no code developers. It's serving closer to the end user, but it's a no code tool. WordPress is a no code tool, and so I think no code, when it kind of came onto the scene in like 2018, 2019, kind of really got reserved for, at least in like the no code kind of YouTube and no code Twitter world, like got reserved for like no code dev tools. But I think that like there's a much broader layer of software that kind of is squarely in the no code space. Totally separately, I just have to say this because it's something that I often get in fights about. But like, no code is the worst term for no code that there possibly is. I think it's misleading. It devalues the product. If you're an agency or builder or selling your services, it's just the worst, and it just doesn't. I have yet to really find a better term other than maybe visual development. But I think it does the whole industry a disservice.
Yo, absolutely. And searchability sucks because
Yeah.
if you do any kind of Google Trends volume no code, you'll see tons of different gambling terms or other things that have nothing to do with it whatsoever. So the ranking doesn't work. And I agree with you. Visual programming, I think, works a lot. I feel that it's just a hot mess. I think that's why I think that's why AI is working so much faster because people understand what that is or they can grasp it a little bit better.
Right.
And then, especially, and I mean, we didn't plan to talk about this, but like definitely like text to application, I think that's going to even jump over no code just because people understand ChatGPT, they understand what they're doing now. And so like no code's in this like weird spot, I think. I still think it's going to be wonderfully useful, but I don't know if society at large is really going to get what we do, if that makes sense.
I think you nailed it, which is, when I saw what OpenAI was doing around text to code, it was like the light bulb moment, and I said, "Holy shit!" OpenAI just became the biggest no code company in the world because what they've done is they've abstracted, like Bubble has abstracted code to their own proprietary language. Webflow has done that to a lesser extent. They basically just kind of organize CSS and HTML a little bit. But what OpenAI and some of these other large language models have done is they've abstracted code into English. And how many people know English? A lot of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not yet at the point where, I think everyone, just because you know English, you can build apps. I think there's a huge layer of knowledge that sits somewhere in between the software layer and just knowing what to say. But I think that is the revolutionary, from a development standpoint, the revolutionary next step. And I think, frankly, I think it puts companies like Bubble that have kind of so squarely kind of gone in a direction sort of apart from AI, and that's very specific and unique to Bubble versus something like a more traditional development language like JavaScript or something like that. Like, I think it puts them at a massive disadvantage.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah. It's going to be interesting in the next 2 years. And I think it's moving so fast. Like, I think we were talking about it, but I just saw Marbleism, which is...
I haven't seen that.
Oh, man. It's crazy. It's
what
using... So it's like... so it's text to app, but it's using Next.js and a bunch of other things to basically spin up everything that you want. So you can be like saying, hey, I want to create the next Airbnb. It will create all the pages. Then it will spin up the server that will have all of your code. And then they just had Data Button that just launched on Product Hunt that we're doing a breakdown on that.
Wow.
Same thing. And I'm like, that one is using Ruby and Python and Fast API. Like, everyone's doing their own kind of tech stack, but it's text to whatever they want to do.
Right.
And then they're in their documentation. The only thing in their documentation is how to prompt it.
Right.
Like, that's their documentation.
Yeah.
So it's not this in-depth of how all these things. It's like, do you understand the concept of a database? Great. Now that allows you to prompt it correctly to create the right backend. Do you know how to prompt it to do the front end? And then it will spit out the code.
Right. And there's no, like, the prompts are everything. And so like a library of prompts, that gets these large language models to build the right kind of code is going to be super valuable. But like the magic there is there's no layer in between those two with a Bubble. And that's why, I spend almost every day in the platform. I think that they've done amazing things. I really like the team over there, but I worry a lot about like this layer that they've created where like it's going to be super hard, I think, to pivot away from sort of the proprietary sort of stack that they've built on top of traditional coding languages. And I openly worry about it.
And I think it's like, and this might be, well, This is our podcast. We can talk whatever we want to do. I was thinking about like the monolithic versus like bespoke, and like where you're going to be able to connect other platforms and be able to do your own tech stack, or it's going to be mono where it's going to be like a bubble, or if you're in Rails or whatever you want to do, that's your whole thing. You're going to stay there. And if bubble makes sense, they've been around for almost like a decade plus now, I think, all said and done, or close to it. It makes sense. They have a lot of fans, but if you're in that set, you're not playing nice with all these other things that you can plug in nicely. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads into, tell me more about the agency, what you created, all of those things, and then what you're doing here. What are we doing here in Kit Studios and all that kind of thing? Yeah.
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, so we haven't focused, on one specific part of the market. So it's not like we said, hey, like we only want to build for, auto dealerships, and we want to build, technology for auto dealerships. It's a project that we've done. As an example, we built sort of a CRM and management platform called Dealerboard for a large group of car dealership owners in Michigan. Really interesting, but like just one example of, not a, consumer facing application, but completely built on Bubble, and saving, thousands and thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of time for a pretty large dealership group in Michigan. So that's one example. Another, part of the market that we have started to focus on a bit more kind of recently is on the creator space. So about 2 years ago, we partnered with the largest YouTube channel devoted to woodworking, and sort of launched a social network called Makerspace, and has been, that was a really cool experience and interesting. I'm sorry, Makerboard. I apologize. I got my Kitboard. Makerspace.io. And what was so interesting about that was at one point, that's because this YouTuber has such a big following on YouTube, and that his ability to drive traffic. At one point, this application had 60,000 monthly active users, and it was running on a $30 bubble stack, and it was performing fantastically, which I think might be one of the reasons why they decided to increase their prices, right? Because just the value there was insane. But so we've really kind of like, done a bunch of interesting work across a number of different industries. But what brought us here specifically was about 8 months ago, I actually cold DM'd Nathan Barry, the founder and CEO of ConvertKit, about some ideas that I had for the platform, and ended up talking, and that basically led to a number of different projects and initiatives that we're working on with him, that basically were included as two of the first apps built natively for ConvertKit, now Kit, their recent launch of the App Store. And so at the Craft and Commerce conference to officially launch those two apps, and the reception has been fantastic. And it's like the energy here and the energy overall for the Kit App Store, and the opportunity to build for 50,000 super active and successful creators is just tremendous.
That's awesome. Tell me a quick preview about these two apps. Who they for?
Sure.
What can they do?
Yeah. So the first is Kitboard, not to be confused with Makerboard. I honestly don't even remember the name. But Kitboard is the first native CRM built for Kit.com. And so basically what it allows creators on Kit to do is take all of their email subscribers, basically sign up for Kitboard, and without having to hook up Zapier or Make and Airtable and all these other kind of web of tools that, if you're a no-coder are great, but if you're a creator are confusing and end up taking away from valuable time that they should be using to create. It enables them to basically run sales funnels and sales flows and basically track their subscribers through different stages of a sales process. All sort of one click out of the box ready to work natively with Kit. And the other app is called WordSmith. WordSmith is actually really cool as well. It allows basically any YouTube creator to enter their YouTube channel. And instantly we grab the 10 most recent video transcripts, plug them into our AI, enable them to customize and train their own AI based on these scripts and any other emails or other content that they want to provide it, and turn all that YouTube content directly into email newsletters, which automatically show up in your Kit account as broadcasts. And the idea is you set this up once and it's sort of running in the background, and you post a video, and then an hour later you go into your Kit account and you have a fully baked draft that's maybe 90% of the way there that you can edit and then send out to your subscribers. And I think the big sort of insight over the past couple months has been how important email newsletters are for YouTube creators. And I think this is a soft stat. I don't know how accurate it is, but it feels like the majority of YouTube creators with over 100,000 YouTube followers do not have email newsletters. I mean, I don't have any stats to back that up, but in an age with, when they're in an age where, they're living with algorithm challenges and risks of platforms being shut down like TikTok, like I don't understand how, for those that are, who rely on these platforms, who are devoting countless hours of their lives and livelihoods to these, to the content and audiences that they're trying to reach, how they don't have an insurance policy of an email newsletter. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that's, even though it's email and it feels like, why are we still talking about email? It's 2024. I believe email is the future in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because it enables that direct one-to-one relationship.
I love it. This is great. So we can't wait to see this. We're going to be previewing all these different tools and be talking about it on the channel. One last question. This is definitely for ones that you're doing great. You're creating all of these great products. Maybe if there's someone that is a no-coder or just an entrepreneur that's trying to figure out what should they be working on first to do something like you've done, what would you encourage them to do? First step.
So I think a lot of people in the no-code space get so caught up on what development platform they're using. They get caught up on Twitter, frankly, like talking. There's a lot of talk on Twitter about no-code. I think it's almost counterintuitive, right? You want to get into no code. So you think you need to spend a lot of time talking about no code, learning no code. You need to know the basic. You need to have the skills, right? That's sort of like a non-starter. In order to build anything, you need to know some basic skills. But I think the one thing that I would have done earlier, and I really think other people should be focused on, is getting out and talking to non-technical people who have the issues that you're trying to solve. I think it's so important because ultimately, Webflow, Bubble, JavaScript, like most people don't care. This is not visible to end users, and it's not visible to the people with these business problems. They don't care. And so I really kind of encourage people kind of looking for projects or looking, to build some sort of no-code service-based business, to like really go and talk to people in the real world that have these issues, because the people in the real world are not talking about how scalable Bubble is. They're just not. So I think that'd be the one piece of advice, and I think that's what's been sort of a game changer for us at Restack, in just kind of reaching out and winning business and growing our brand.
I love it, man. We can't wait to see follow your story as the launch of these new products and more to come, where can the good people find you at?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Matt_Crandall or check out my website at restacklabs.com.
Good times, man. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, for being in this beautiful space, and enjoy the rest of the conference, man.
It's a pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.